Hello, folks. This is SIG Cluster Lifecycle's kubeadm office hours. Today is July 25th, 2018. Our agenda is non-existent, so what do folks want to chat about?
I think the beta 1 configuration stuff is going to be on the table for a fair amount of time. Let me add that to the meeting notes.
I'm doing it right now.
Okay, cool. Also, another heads up is
my only request for those changes is to please make sure that they're staged, at least as kind of outlined, into individual components, because doing the reviews and the changes for some of these things, like in the last cycle, was painful.
Yeah, this time I've actually, in my opinion at least, done it the right way. I don't know what others think, but I think there are now 1, 2, 3. Okay, to date, I've submitted 10 different PRs with distinct scopes. Specific.
So I talked with other folks regarding your component config changes.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, yes, we should do this. And everyone also is non-committal. So like they're not committing to making the changes that I'm aware of. I talked with Hawkins and I talked with Bobby regarding some of these things. No one owns the controller manager, so it'd be like we would have to do that.
Yeah.
So I don't exactly know how we proceed other than like someone from the SIG literally going through and helping to move some of the configuration changes forwards, unless Stefan is committing to making that effort go.
I think he is, and also to the best of my ability to do stuff, I will. But yeah, Stefan, and then we have D submitting something for the scheduler. We have some other Chinese contributors as well, stepping up the work. Stuart UI is one of them, I think. He already submitted some PRs. But yeah, I mean, where we're at now, like the KEP got merged, and which basically means it's provisionally accepted. And with that in mind, we can now, or we have like 3 or 4 PRs up already. Most of them looks good to me. So what I hope will be possible now, like after this evening, now that this got merged yesterday, is that we can actually, someone with top level approval rights can merge. Because we're adding new owners files, we're adding new API subdirectories, etc.
So here's a question for you. Do you think like SIG Cluster Lifecycle should co-maintain some of that stuff? Because it moves it out of the hands into more broader configuration for the components. And if they change things, at least being aware of those changes makes a lot of sense. The problem is like it's an API, it'll be an API machinery staging area unless we totally fragment it into a completely separate repo.
So this is kind of where it's hard, because I mean, ideally, if we would find folks that are committed, more folks that are committal, etc., we could maybe start a work group. But that again is, work groups don't own code, and this belongs to like all the SIGs involved. So I'm not sure yet, or nobody knows really exactly who's gonna. I mean, will that be one SIG's name, or will now there are 5 SIGs named in the like SIG authors or owners in the cap. But actually on a code level for a util package somewhere, who should own it, that is unclear.
There's also like the broader problem with like general configuration of distilling it down to like, there's common configuration exit. Like I was just talking with Clayton about this the other day, and that there are a set of non-overlapping concerns between features and common things that should occur across every component, right? Like there should be a shared set of component configurations for every component. Those include things like QPS, and other parameters that exist across all daemons, but they're not right now. They're kind of like spuriously located in all these different locations.
Yeah, exactly. And that is what this separation of code or code refactor is hoping to solve, to make it so we have this area. For example, now we're going to put something in case.io / API machinery. We're going to add one new config group with util. These util structs, like, okay, here is how you connect to the API server. Mm-hmm. And then in case.io / API, so we have one util config group that is not an API group, but holds structs that is about like, okay, here is how you do lead election, or here is how an API server or any server would serve requests, like with profiling, with regards to profiling, bind ports, authorization, authentication, stuff like that, that any component like the kubelet control manager scheduler also needs. And then we have some packages that move out to case.io utils, but that are just like code, that is code. But I noticed and pinged him this today, because case.io utils doesn't even have an owners file. So it's in a blurry state, but we're hoping to eventually figure things out. I'm gonna try to link here the different PRs that we have at the moment for reference. Does it make sense? That the explanation makes sense to you, kinda? Mm-hmm. Okay. Can I find the last thing, maybe? Does anyone else in the SIG have comments or opinions on this?
No, it's kind of one of those things you don't want to own. You want to consume it and for it to be sane.
Yeah. We want standardization and like consistency across all the components, and it should just work, but it doesn't.
That's true. It's a I don't even know how to describe it. It's a very inconsistent, weird wonderland.
Yeah.
The problem is like Mike Denise had the original proposals for this stuff a long time ago, and it sounded great, and then it kind of like got half there, quarter there. At least the kubelet got done.
Yeah.
But But I think for the long-term maintenance and supportability for configuration of these components, I'm surprised that Google went heavily invest in some of these things. I got to figure out how to social food that one, because it makes a ton of sense if people want to be able to customize configuration for deployments in any way, shape, or form, especially from a cluster API perspective, right?
Yeah, really. There's a lot of technical depth here. And I'm hoping also that with this proposal that sets a clear path forward, we can actually get more people, for instance, Google is as well, later committed to executing on stuff.
I think I'll try to asynchronously sync with Robbie too, to figure out like where it seems like there's a ton of resources going into the shiny of some things and not a lot of resources going into paying down some of the technical debt.
Common problem.
Yes.
Okay, but yeah, that's it. I linked the 3 PRs we have. I'm hoping that with the proposal merged now, we can get the LGTM on those PRs to get the ball rolling. And then when we have, let me say it this way, when we have the initial API group there, myself and Stefan and some other involved in this in the owners files, we can hack around and do stuff. And when we're happy with the structure and everything, we can send the next cap, which is okay. Now we've learned X, Y, and Z, and we are ready to move to beta. And now we go through the full API process for every config struct, I don't know, and field for stuff in the generic components and in generic repos, and then each SIG will do for their own component.
Yeah, but we need to socialize within the SIG to get the reviewer bandwidth and buy-in from them, so that it's on their roadmap. They have folks who will help.
Yes.
Efforts, because without that, it's a
dead end. For example, the kubeproxy stuff that affects us directly.
Yep, I was going to go squat on SIG networking sometime in the near future, and
please do that you, because I can't in my time zone.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Next up is version 1, beta 1 configuration stuff. Questions, comments, concerns?
Liz, myself, and Fabrizio walked through it all. I'm not concerned. I like the approach. I think the biggest concern I have is more from a consumer/UX perspective than it is from the plan. The plan, I think, makes a ton of sense from a sort of software design perspective. I think from the UX perspective of what users expect and what they're used to, it is a pretty large departure. So I do think we need to make sure that we spell out how we migrate the configs almost explicitly in the upgrade instructions, because people have become used to having like auto upgrades on and some other things, and like in 1.11 that fit them. So we need to make sure that like when we have release notes for the configuration changes, that we spell out that this is a migration, and inherently migrations can be dangerous or non-compatible in some ways, and that they need to make sure they vet their configuration before they do the upgrade itself to make sure it's all sane.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, for pretty much all of the stuff in the cap, we have migration path forward. But as you said, like
But it's still
it's not 100%. Yeah, we can't know for sure.
Because you're taking one config struct and breaking it down into several, right? And now the UX for like things like init is basically init will require 2 configs instead of 1, right?
Yeah.
So Liz, do you have any comments too as well?
I think I think mostly just echoing what Tim said. Our biggest problem is docs. We're going to need to make sure we write a lot of documents, just like this is how the new thing works. This is like if you used this setting before, this is where you would find it now. All that sort of stuff. So I don't want us to think once we get the PRs done that we're done.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah, very well. And to be clear, there's a lot of information here, like in the written text as well. And this explains the delta between alpha 1 and beta. So that's why we also have some of the things that we already implemented in the last cycle are now like officially mentioned here in this doc.
I think it's okay to not hit. Do you think we're going to hit beta 1 by the time 1.12 lands?
I have no idea, but I intentionally made it alpha 3.
Yes.
That's for that purpose. So in case we don't hit it, it's just fine because it will upgrade again kind of automatically under the hood. The user will have to change yes, but it's better to have, or like we know that the alpha 3 is way more similar to beta than alpha 2. So it's a step in the right direction in any case.
Have we managed to get any buy-in or reviews from downstream users, either like people who are just using kubeadm to set things up, that sort of thing? Have they? Is this like a thing that our users have talked about wanting, or is it just a thing that we're guessing will improve things?
The change for the configuration is like a long-term maintenance support for us. So it's not really like a user-driven change. It's like, how can we design the configuration such that we can support this in the long haul and not suffer all the pits and follies that we've encountered time. Because once we get to beta, we're going to be stuck with this for a long time.
Yeah, I mean that's just like, even if the change itself is not user driven, we don't want to finalize the beta config, and once we get there, a bunch of users are just like, this doesn't work at all for our use case. This is not helpful for us, that sort of thing. I think it would be really good if we could to find somebody to look this over and say, yeah, I would be able to use this.
Oh, I'd love it if people would do that more often. Attend the SIG and be like, I'm a power user, I use this all the time. But the problem is solicitation of feedback. There's no real precedent for how we go about doing this in a clean manner that doesn't chaotic. I can imagine unleashing chaos, be like, hey, here's a cap, and tweet it out, and then you get like the randomness of the internet, which is not productive either. You almost want like a set of trusted people that use this that we know are very have been part of this community for a while, to be able to get their feedback. It's kind of like having like a trusted set of testers or beta users group or something like that.
One group to tap might be people that have, we could look through the repository for people who have filed issues that haven't contributed much code, because that's probably a pretty good bar of engaged enough to give constructive feedback, but not so connected to us that they're going to have the same blinders on that we are.
Yeah, that could work. I'll ask the rest of the WeWorks team if they have bandwidth, and I mean, I'm not sure how much or in what extent they use kubeadm, but they definitely are interested in this as well and going forward with stuff. So yeah, I'll ask them if they can help.
Maybe we can start like a mini campaign, for lack of better words. Send out an email, send out a tweet, say join the email list, and if you are an active consumer and want to know what's coming down the pike and want to help us test things, we'd love your feedback, yada yada. Something we'll offer free swag.
Yeah.
Coordinate with George.
For some, I don't know for what way will be the best one, but we need to try to ask from our Chinese community members, because in China we have a lot of do-it-yourself clouds made. Way more than we have in Europe or in the US.
No, they are masters of MacGyvering.
Yeah, I know kubeadm is used in many places there. Also judging from the issue reports as one source. So yeah, I don't know how to get hold of those people though, but I can ask D maybe to try to spread the word and like share with his contacts.
Now, maybe we can host once a month meeting in Chinese time zone, so they can have chance to join.
Yeah, I just checked, and it's 12:30 a.m. there, so probably one reason we don't get a lot of visitors from there.
Yeah.
We're looking at a new contributor session for the Shanghai KubeCon, and if there's things that that this SIG would like to have covered there, feel free to reach out to me. I can make sure we do some socializing of that there.
That'd be great. When is KubeCon Shanghai?
Second week of November.
Okay. So probably not specifically useful for getting feedback on this proposal, but long-term goal. I agree that would be a good idea. In general, I always try to push back against engineers who build stuff for other engineers making UX decisions, because we have a tendency to put blinders on and be like, well, this is going to make the code easier, so obviously this is the right way forward. Not that I'm not just as guilty of that as anyone else, but we've got some resources at Heptio too that deal with kubeadm. And the other thing is, if we're trying to get kubeadm established as a standard even within like clouds and that sort of thing, or other large providers, it'd be good to get buy-in from those people as well. We're not gonna I think we're unlikely to become the de facto standard for Kubernetes setup just by sheer force of will. We're going to need buy-in and socialization and that sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. You hit the nail on the head. That's kind of what my biggest concern was with some of the changes were, because when people depend upon the current UX of a tool. We need to make sure that the consistency is maintained for that UX, and we're listening to their needs. The problem is like the randomness of the internet with regards to this particular project. If having a campaign of some sort where we try to focus, maybe we should talk with Contribex and try and get an idea and coordinate a campaign around this to solicit broader feedback and to have a venue that's focused, targeted, and makes sense, so that way we can actually proceed forwards and not just kind of ad hoc things at will. Does that seem like
if we could come up with some very concrete questions, we could send out we could tweet out surveys or something too. But obviously that's a second or third round thing. Anybody do psychology or sociology in university and can
I actually have
set up a study?
I have and done statistics.
Perfect.
Cool.
Thanks for volunteering, Tim.
Yeah, now we know who does it. Yeah, but that sounds really good.
Yeah, just because I've done it doesn't mean I want to do it.
Yeah, but in general, I completely agree that we need more voices. With regards to the immediate action plan to move forward, I hope that we have consensus on the specific PR. I'm gonna re-push this today.
That's your whip?
Yes.
Okay.
But
yeah.
Just the direction, that is what I'm asking.
Yes. In general, I like the direction. And I asked Fabrizio he created a bunch of sequence diagrams, which actually help a ton for understanding the change. So I think adding those sequence diagrams in general would be a broader consumable for other people to understand how kubeadm works and how the configuration flows throughout the different set of events that occur.
Yeah. So I'm going to push this. It's hopefully, and fix the to-do description stuff. Because some days before I had to go, so didn't have time to write a bunch there, but now I do. Yeah, but this is when we get this, we're in a really good shape. So we have init configuration, join configuration, and cluster configuration. Cluster configuration is the only thing that gets uploaded to the config map, and the other ones are runtime specific. And the component configs can be added as separate YAML documents. And in 1.12 we support the kubeproxy and the kubebot. So then we're in a good place. That is, at least from my perspective, the place where we want to be in GA and beta and higher. That kind of structure. Then what fields and etc. we actually put into cluster configuration is to be discussed. What specific structure we put in the join configuration, for example, is to be discussed. But I think the init configuration is already kind of approved from last cycle with node registration options and bootstrap tokens. So that is kind of done. The other two needs more polishing to be decided in the cap. But if we at least make Alpha 3 the version that splits out this stuff, and then we can iterate on the actual, I don't know, field grouping and stuff inside of cluster configuration later. later in this cycle or the next or similar?
I'm fine with moving on to the next item, unless there are other bits that we want to discuss here. All right. Next item is, it relates to your topic, but we have technical debt with Bootstrap tokens that we were supposed to fix in Client Go, as well as I'd like to rip it out of our internal structures because it doesn't belong there. We already knew that. So I'm going to bump the issue to P0 and probably work with Stefan to try and find a happy landing home for this stuff. But ideally, I'd like to rip it out of, kubeadm types because it doesn't belong there.
Yes. What was proposed was a new staging repo called case.io/bootstraps.
Another staging repo?
Yeah.
That's the plan?
Well, that was discussed in the issue. If you follow the thread, I mean, where would you put it?
I don't see why it wouldn't be like a utility function for some of Client Go.
Well, that was the main issue, that they don't think it. So now it's in Client Go/tools, but they said.
Well, Daniel said,
yeah,
I think Daniel's stalwart in some of this. I need to talk with Daniel in more detail because that makes it even worse, I think, because who's going to vendor in just this separate repository for one individual utility, which is a wrapper of an existing API?
So, I mean, what would exist there is the types that represent the secrets. And then, so like Bootstrap token distract all the functions that relate to passing a Bootstrap token and converting it into a secret and doing round trips back and forth. And maybe this doesn't exist, and we maybe want to create a client-ish thing for it as well. I don't know if we need that actually, but yeah. So those functions, and I don't know what other functionality we could break out of core into Bootstrap. We may break out the authorization module of the API server. I don't know. Maybe not. But that is related. We may want to break out the Bootstrap token stuff in the controller manager. The actual, like, just the package, and then still run it, vendor it from the controller manager code, but vendor it from the Bootstrap repo. And then C+ lifecycle would be the kind of canonical owner of this repo. I think that was what most people liked on the thread.
Okay, I'll talk with Stefan and try to get this moving because we committed to making a fix in the 112 cycle when we talked with him to get that change in for 111.
Yes. Yeah, and it's mostly a pure code move. So it's not that tricky, but it's still there are a lot of small corner cases indeed. But this is, in the end, this is gonna look like or look very similar to the common config struct we split out in the proposal we first talked about. Here with regards to component configs. It is pretty much going to look like that. So we need someone to create the skeleton repo and stuff, then owners files and automation set in place, and then we can start move code.
I'll talk with Stefan first and then see what we need to do.
Cool.
I just had a quick poll before. I think the next topic is a quick poll before I proceed. I'd like to rip out self-hosting, just like all the code and maintenance of it before we start to get to the HA configuration stuff. It just simplifies the deployment. And if we want to, we can always create a separate script or utility that basically does the pivoting if people desire that. But once they do that, then you're out of the upgrade lifecycle maintenance of kubeadm.
Yeah, should we deprecate first in 1.12 and rip out in 1.13?
It's alpha. We could do that. So it's alpha meaning that we could do whatever we want. But I'm okay with doing that so we give people a heads up, because I do know that some people, for better or for worse, depend upon this. I can easily mark deprecated and make that change now, and then put and segregate the code where possible to get get all the things commented up and ready to go for the next cycle.
Yeah, I think I would prefer that, even though we don't have to, like, technically we don't have to, but maybe we want to for the sake of our users.
Well, I'm just thinking that we're going to have weird code complexity problems with HA stuff as we add the master join workflow. So we'll just have to say it doesn't support any of this other. I'll try to shuffle the code around if possible to eliminate that.
1.12 and remove completely in 1.13. Okay. Sounds good. What else do we have?
I don't have any other agenda items I can think of.
What is the backlog looking like right now? Do we have it under control?
We need more resources right now. We are, like Heptio, shifting back to it, but if we can get people to commit to stuff, that would be super de-duper. The burn rate is not so great, but we do have everything triaged. So like the 1.12 cycle has all the issues assigned, and Livimir is doing a bang up job with like addressing inbound as soon as it comes in. And I think we just need folks who can commit to doing pieces of the backlog, not just the pieces that they'd like to do.
Yeah.
There was one thing I can think of now with regards to the Docker /. Well, I'm going to table that discussion, I think, till another time, because I need to talk with Signode folks.
So yeah, that was the thing. The Sentinel file stuff.
That's not even
to chat about.
That's not even a Sentinel file. It's like, I think we used the wrong term, or somebody triggered off the wrong term. It's like a just transaction history, right? They took a issue and they ran with it without discussing possible solutions. The conversation piece we had was that it'd be nice to have some history when people log issues against kubeadm repo of all the details of what they had run as their argument list to submission. So like we could have as part of the, you're filing a bug request, please cat this file into here, and this lists all the things you have done. Because sometimes it's not just one thing, they've tried an exhaustive list of several things. Just to get better feedback into the loop for issue filing. I think there was actually a concrete use case too as well, besides that one. But that's not a Sentinel file by definition.
Yeah, I don't know. To me, it feels creepy to make that kind of transaction history file in case
I think if it's localized to the machine underneath var lib kubeadm, that it's done for a lot of things. It's not unheard of. So that way you know what was called, and the person doesn't need to add it to the submission. It's up to them if they want to or not. But also for an operator's perspective, if you had multiple operators coming through a given infrastructure, you would know what was called on the different nodes, because that history can sometimes be lost across reboot cycles and whatnot. So it's like it's a breadcrumb more than anything else.
Yeah, I don't know still if I really like it, but I'd love to hear others as well speak up. So, Jason, Liz, yeah, what are your thoughts?
I'm honestly not super up to date, excuse me, on this particular issue. I've been mostly focusing on Sonoboy. I'm only like, as of yesterday and today, getting back into kubeadm stuff.
So this is some that, you know, other installers that I've been involved with have done as well. And most of it is around logging, you know, just enough information to be able to help a user with reporting issues. You know, as long as we're not storing it in the cluster and as long as we're not storing it as like a world readable file, I don't see an issue with it.
Yeah, I have to think a bit more about it, I guess. I haven't really made up my mind yet.
Yeah, there's a bunch of installers that already do this similar type of like or like log history.
Yeah, should we talk to Justin as well? Does CUPS do it?
CUPS, I think, stores actually more information. They sync cluster state to an S3 bucket.
Yeah, but that is like the cluster configuration, right? If to use the same analogy, not
right,
like the transaction.
The cluster configuration for CUPS is basically analogous to the concatenation of all of our configuration files and the invocation of those. It's what inputs and drives kind of the orchestration of CUPS.
Okay. Okay. I'll think about it and come back to it later this week, I hope. So Fabrizio is away this week. I think But what is our take on the phases work?
I only saw it today, so I need to take a look at it. But I generally thought we wanted to shed phases and move it into the subcommand for cleanliness. And I haven't even looked at the PR yet, but the name of the PR was kept for kubeadm phases to beta, which is different than his original proposal. And
I think it's been up for a long time. It's just so that we've forgotten about it.
Well, I'll take a look through the plan. But the original plan we had was to get rid of alpha phase, and most of the subcommands would just slot underneath the standard lifecycle event, which would be like an init join. And then the subcommands would be like init certs, init blah, init this, init that, because that makes a ton of sense and it's common to what you're doing. The problem I think would be that then it's fully supported. So might want to do like some staging over time.
Yeah.
No, it looks like this is the original proposal. It's exactly what we had really originally talked about a while ago. So
yeah.
I think that should be like a graduation criteria for GA. I didn't know that we were going to do it for 112 because it wasn't on the backlog currently for 112 as a prioritized thing.
I don't think it should be either, but I don't necessarily agree that it should be a blocker for GA, but
I think for UX experience, I do think it makes a ton of sense because there's a lot of people who we could still phase it in, right? I guess if you're being pedantic about what GA means, then we could always phase in those changes into init over time. It doesn't need to be a blocker for GA. It would be, I think, a nice to have. So that way when we say the init command is well defined and scoped for users that want to base their tooling around it, right?
Yeah. Okay, I could actually share my screen here and just show the planning doc that we had open and see where we're at while we're talking about this. So with regards to config to beta 1, this is kind of done. We need some more editing changes and minor stuff here as well as get solid feedback from the rest of the community, the broader ecosystem. This is done, this is done, this is done, this is done. Then we have one more. Split init master configuration into init configuration and cluster. Rename node configuration to join. So there's only this last piece that isn't done here.
I believe that's already in
the
Fabrizio's tracking issue. And what's it called? The issues are the canonical source of truth now. We're not referencing the doc anymore because it's all blown out into GitHub milestone.
Yeah, so it's only the cluster configuration stuff. Here we said we're gonna look at this soon. Yeah, when you know more after you've talked to Stefan, please let me know what is the plan here, Tim. Do we know what the state of docs is?
I need to resync up with Jennifer. Some of the changes have already been made, but I think I need to go circle back with Jennifer to figure out where exactly we are now. I know I've been reviewing a number of small PRs and some critical ones too, with regards to the docs changes. But the overall grand unified field theory change for docs, I don't know what state that's in yet. I'll poke her on Slack.
Okay, cool. So at least some progress here, and then we're optimistic that more will happen. Cool.
Yep.
As far as I know, we haven't had any time to execute on this, and there's not much detail here either. I really have to write those issues down someday.
The rotate cert one is something that, what's it called? The upgrade already does that, but I know Liz was currently looking at some of the cert rotation stuff.
Yeah, it's not done in a good way. Just like that's very easy to say. Right now, if it's like 3 months to expiration time or something and you upgrade, it's gonna rewrite the cert after the upgrade process. But this would be something more like, and that's only for the API server serving cert. But this would be more like, okay, execute and it's using, right now it's using the local CA on disk. This would be more before the upgrade starts, execute a couple of CSRs, and after we have root access, we can approve them so they get signed. Then write them to disk, store the old ones in the same file shifting manner we have in a backup place. And when the new API server starts up, the new version, it would already have this new cert, because right now the API server still uses the old cert. It's only until the next upgrade that it's effective. So there's stuff to be improved there. This is on kind of, it's moving slowly, but it's kind of on track with the proposal that I have merged, because yeah, myself and Stefan is working on it. Dee will send a PR for the scheduler, which is like the initial component to be done. Then after that, everything else will follow. We had some Chinese contributor, I think, signing up for moving the kubeproxy stuff, staging as well, which is then a prerequisite for getting it to beta. So, but yeah, if you still have time, Tim, to someday hit up Mike Toffen and talk to him about this specific thing, it would be great.
I'm shifting back now, so I should have time.
Okay, cool. Somebody looked at
So we had people sign up for this, but then they went poof. So Lee was planning on helping out here and to set up some of the tests. And one of our internal testing resources, who was actually very active, Ruben, has been priority interrupted towards other things. I'm poking him right now with regards to like when he can come back, because ideally, if he can switch back, we can start to make progress on some of the test automation that we already have the jiggery for the test automation. We just basically add the tests now. We have kubeadm specific test suite. We can add the tests to verify some of the configuration and upgrade changes we want.
Cool. Yeah. Then with the cluster API approaching its first alpha release, I
that's
hope
still
we can.
like months away, to be honest.
Is it? Okay.
I think it's like a month plus away. But if your goal is to fix the testing infrastructure by using cluster API, I'm wholeheartedly in support of it. But I think we need a Googler to help sign up to make that change.
Yeah, I also think that Ben the Elder said something along the lines in SIG testing or SIG release or whatever that he can help with this kind of setup. I mean, he has very extensive background in SIG testing, so he really knows what he's doing there. And I could talk to him, but I hope we may get some we may get some help from there.
Just as a broader testing issue thing, Google is finally looking at building out sort of a per PR DIND type of solution, so that way you can actually executing the binaries that you've made changes to. And I'm trying to converse more broadly with Feda and Ben to try and channel some of this work so that we could get use kubeadm to be the deployer, the default deployer for that jig, and that would be on a per PR basis then.
Yes, that was exactly the thing I was talking about Ben doing.
That's an ideal scenario.
Yeah, but if I understood him correctly, the base would be kubeadm from the get-go.
That's the goal. Yes.
Yes.
This is the dream that we've talked about many times over, but no one can commit. It's always been like the P3 dream that no one can commit to. We're out of time right now, so we should drop.
Yeah, but I think we're okay on track, and then we'll think more next week. Hopefully, get some more PRs in during the week.
Yep.
Okay.
Take care, Lucas.
Bye. Take care.